Moving on, Ukraine is reportedly planning to cancel its visa-free regime with Israel and exclude the country from the NATO-led defence contact group called Ramstein. Now, Kiev has accused Tel Aviv of taking a pro-Russian position on the international arena and even espionage.
The Israeli authorities did not provide any real assistance. Instead, the information obtained during the meetings in the Ramstein format is used by Israel in its own interests.
The Ramstein Group is a coalition of 54 countries, including 31 NATO states and 23 others. The goal of this alliance is to provide Ukraine with military support. Now, the group takes its name after the US air base in Germany, where the first meeting was held. The latest criticism from Kiev comes after Jerusalem announced its decision to suspend medical care for Ukrainian refugees, citing a lack of funding. Kiev has previously accused Israel of providing Russia with information it received at the Ramstein meetings and refusing to supply Ukraine with weapons. Israel's ambassador to Kiev has said that his country's interests come first and it cannot count on help from NATO, which is sponsoring Ukraine.
Firstly, the NATO states, are not in a state of war, unlike my country. Secondly, Israel is a country that, in the event of aggression, can rely only on itself, unlike NATO members, who are protected by a collective security treaty.
Well, let's now discuss this with our guest, journalist and political analyst Nick Kolyohin. Many thanks for coming into the studio. So lovely to see you today. So Ukraine has repeatedly accused Israel of this pro-Russian position, despite all of the help Tel Aviv has been providing to Ukrainian refugees with medical care, medical support at this time, as well as the reassurances from Israel that it will remain neutral throughout this conflict. What's your take on Kiev's allegations?
I believe that Israel sees Russia not as an enemy but as a friend for many years and decades. And that's why they don't want to take a position like the West against Russia. But on the other hand, the United States and Ukraine pushing Israel to take some substantial, at least to say something substantial. But as long as the Israeli Prime Minister can continue and the Israeli government to be neutral, they will do that because Israel has so much to lose if they will take a side in this conflict.
Ukraine has lashed out at Tel Aviv, really, for slashing the medical aid to 14,000 Ukrainian refugees, citing a lack of funding. What's your take on Kiev's criticism of the Israeli government? Could it somehow be justified?
I don't believe that Israel doesn't have money for this help. I think the reasons are different. I can guess maybe they don't want, again, to take a position at this conflict, and that's why they want, in the beginning, they helped both the Russians that came to Israel and also Ukrainians, and now they're just helping to Ukrainians and they want to halt it. So I believe this is the reason, and I'm not sure who is behind it, more the United States or more Ukraine itself that pushing Israel to take this some kind of side in this conflict, because for Ukraine, I don't think Israel can really make a change. It's not a game changer for Ukraine if Israel will help more to the Ukrainians with military aid or with this aid to the refugees.
Speaking of the US, we know that Washington is one of Israel's closest allies. They have a history of warm relations with many NATO members, between Israel, of course. Now, if the reports on Kiev's plans of demanding Israel's exclusion from the Ramstein group are true, how could that potentially pan out for Ukraine in terms of its ties with the West?
So I just asked tonight the Israeli Foreign Ministry about this, and they told me just take a notice that no one official from both sides made any comments about that. So maybe this report is not so true, and I don't know what behind this report on the Kiev Post newspaper. And as long as the Israeli government's now position is that this didn't happen yet. Ukraine didn't want to exclude Israel, and they don't want to do something with the visa regime. But if it will continue, if this position of Israel will continue and this conflict will continue for years or for a long time, maybe eventually Israel will need to take steps that it doesn't want to take.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what would it take for Israel to send weapons to Kiev? What kind of pressure might it face, or what could happen that would make it want to change its neutral stance?
I believe just if the pressure will be from the United States and it can, in some way, to make the national security of Israel under some kind of danger, that's the only reason that the Israeli government could make this move. But it should be a direct threat towards Israel that if you don't send military aid or something like that to Ukraine, we will hold our help, military help to Israel, and the United States gives billions of dollars each year to Israel for military weapons. So that's, I believe, the only thing that can really change the stance of Israel.
But surely Israel already has enough on its plate, doesn't it? It has the ongoing tensions on the West Bank and Gaza, along with tensions with some neighbouring countries as well. What would actually be in it for Israel to get involved and pick a side in the Ukraine conflict?
They just can't lose from that, and everybody acknowledge it and understand it in Israel. So maybe some politicians, they made those kind of statements, as the former Prime Minister of Israel, Yair Lapid, that said he wants to be on the right side of the history, and some other also politicians, but they made it maybe for some political gain that they want even to get not from the Israeli public but more from the West, because they also have a lot of the Israeli political system is based on the help and support from the Jews in the United States, because in Israel and in the United States you have the same amount of Jews more or less, and they have a lot of money and a lot of influence on Israel. So maybe it was more because of that he made this kind of statement. But in the end, for Israel, the best is as what the first Prime Minister of Israel during this conflict, we have already three, Bennett did, that he tried to negotiate between both sides in a way, and that was for them an excuse why Israel doesn't take any side in this conflict.
When it comes to Ukraine, it's been widely reported that it has a problem with Nazism. It was widely reported in the Western mainstream media before the Ukraine conflict, not so much now, but we've been doing reporting on it here also. Israel, of course, has a painful history with Nazism. Why has Tel Aviv stopped short of condemning this problem that Ukraine has?
So in the beginning of this conflict, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, made a speech to the Israelis, and he also tried to mention some history of the during the World War II and what was the Ukrainian part in that. And many Israelis was angry about that, because many Israelis, they remember that Ukraine, as many other European countries, they not just didn't help to save Jews, they even helped the Nazis to kill Jews. And that's why many Israelis remember that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, because there is so much hate against Russia, they just afraid to take any kind of position, because they know it wouldn't be good. It doesn't look good for them, you understand? So deep inside of them, many Israelis, even politicians, they know the truth. They know about all of that. They know the truth. But in this political nowadays, especially in the Western media, all this situation is impossible, because if you will say something pro-Russian, something against the Nazism, against something that can just hint that maybe in Ukraine you have some kind of neo-Nazis, it will end your career if you're a politician. So that's why everybody tried to be quiet.
Wow. Ukraine's rhetoric has been getting increasingly demanding when it comes to asking for more military aid from other countries. Why do you think Kiev is looking more and more desperate? And How are Ukraine's foreign sponsors likely to respond? We've kind of seen a turn of the tides, haven't we? We've seen the UK's defence minister saying we're not Amazon, and people saying that Ukraine's not being grateful or showing any gratitude. So do you feel like the tides are changing, or do you think they're just going to continue feeding the Kiev machine?
I said from the beginning, no matter how much weapons he will provide to Ukraine, it wouldn't help them. And everybody that looking at these both countries, you can't compare with Russia. You can't win them on the battlefield, it's for sure. So for me, it doesn't make sense. The only thing that I can maybe guess is that some people get richer from that, maybe some people get some political or some other kind of gains. A lot of Ukrainians, they really, because of their media that all the day trying to show them how they will win on the battlefield, maybe they really believe that they have a chance, and some of them really believe that if they will have more weapons or planes or something like that, it will help them. But I don't believe that serious people believe in that also in Ukraine, because it's impossible to win Russia, as I see it.
Many thanks for coming in today. It's really good to see you live in the studio with me this evening. Journalist and political analyst Nick Kulyohin, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here on RT International. Plenty more of the latest updates and much more to be found on our website, rt.com. I'll be back in 30 minutes with more.